people on my team killed. Really spooky people. I've had them appear in my life and threaten me. I say, buzz off. But you know, I've had 4 people on my team killed.
4 people in your team killed?
I have. And you know, when Mr. Grush was asked about this at the House Oversight hearing last year, he said yes. And because when Mr. Grush was working with people that I had been briefing to give information so he could begin to drill down on this. But he was not a direct whistleblower witness. He's called a whistleblower, but he's not. He didn't directly deal with the technology or the programs. He was investigating them on behalf of folks that I was given information to tell them where to go. Like I told them exactly where to go in the high desert of California to find this stuff, or you know, wherever. So, but you know, someone asked. One of the members of the committee, I think it was Congressman Burchett, who I've been working with, asked, "Well, have people been killed?" And of course, a few months earlier, I think it was January of last year, there was a peripheral person on that team who was killed because he stuck his nose in the wrong place. So people are very naive, frankly, if they don't think this kind of corrupt power. You know, think of the worst thing you've ever heard about the mafia or the mob on steroids, hypercharged on steroids.
But let's stay on that.
That's what you're dealing with here. So they're thugs.
4 people that were killed on your team, they're public? But like, how were they killed, and how recent was it?
Oh, this goes back in the 90s.
What were you talking about? And that, you know, what were they talking about or digging that cost them their lives?
They were deep cover sources giving me information.
So they had jobs
before I had good security in place, and I didn't have what I have in place now, which I call.
Can you say what they did for a living or no?
Well, there were various. Well, one was a military naval intelligence guy. One was CIA. And one was an assistant of mine.
It was an assistant of yours?
A good friend.
How did he get killed?
She.
How did she get killed?
It was basically a chemical weapon that was induced a very aggressive cancer very quickly. And, you know, I have an FBI lady on my team who's a special agent. And she said, we have 150 substances like that.
150 substances to inject cancer into somebody?
Or brush up against someone or do something that will kill them, yeah.
Brush up against somebody, like there was a movie I watched about the brushing up to somebody that...
Oh, absolutely.
So that's not just a movie. In real life, they can do that as well.
Oh, 100%.
Okay, so let's go back to this. So this
is, but let's go back to the point I'm making, and that is people are afraid, and they should be. Now, this is why, I mean, going back to 94, I asked the president at the time, Clinton, to do an executive order protecting high-value whistleblowers and witnesses, whether corporate or government, military, CIA, and no one would do it. I have a big announcement. I'm saying this on your show now because it starts June 20th. There is a special access project that has been stood up that is going to provide this kind of security and protection to whistleblowers and high-value witnesses that are been sitting on the fence coming forward. This is a big announcement. I hope this goes viral because that's what we need. Now, I asked the Congress to put that in a bill, but they're not quite at the point where they realize lethal force has been used. They're still a little bit naive. And so since lethal force has been authorized, in fact, not long ago, there was a meeting in a SCIF talking about engaging the wet works. Wet works is a term for assassinations. It used to be an old Soviet term, wet from blood. But those sort of operations is not some kind of movie. You know, it's real. I've dealt with it. And, you know, this chairman of this huge, former chairman of this big Fortune 50 corporation, he regrets what he did, you know, and he has stated to us that the whole world decades ago could have had quote unquote free energy with these technologies. And look at the state it's in. So let me ask. He really wants to come forward, but he's scared. So I'm saying, look, I'm going to just try to set this up.
I see what you're saying.
So this is a big announcement that there's, I can't say what agency it's under, but it is an authorized special access project that can monitor security and provide security and
to whistleblowers
Yes, and witnesses, people who have been in these projects, seen things, that want to come forward, or they may have documents like this gentleman.
Is this an agency that has a lot of credibility today?
I don't think any government agency in the United States has a lot of credibility today.
Is this a three-letter agency that we're familiar with?
It would certainly be known by any educated American, but I can't comment beyond that. But I will say that the people in it are all folks who had been in special forces, and they are not in the military now, because you can't do that. Of course, military can't act domestically, but and they're wonderful people. And so I've been working with these folks for a while, providing them an unredacted version of the archive we just released, meaning unredacted. It has all the names. It has 760 some whistleblowers in it. Now, if you go to the archive, you'll see, I think we have 120 some whistleblowers and witnesses, name, rank, serial number, and their video testimony. Not one or two, not five. So what's in this archive, if the Congress held hearings starting next week from Monday through Friday, 9 to 5.
These are the names, May 13, 2024?
Yeah, look at this. Yeah, it says 700 and some. But the first 100 and some are people we've already interviewed. We have their DD-214s, discharge forms. We have video, most of them on video testimony.
Are these all public?
And it's all public. Anyone with a computer on planet Earth can see these.
Can they see the videos, or that's being released?
Both.
Is it already released?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what's the website that they can go to?
We have to put that up. This is a DP, like Disclosure Project Intelligence Archive. It's DPI Archive. DPIA. Yeah. Oh, well, archive. Yeah.
We'll put the link below. We have it right there.
Yeah. We just released this last week, and of course we had about thousands of bots that invaded the site, tried to shut it down. So we are asking people to register. It's free. We have a crowdfunding program because it's probably going to cost us, I don't know, tens of thousands of dollars a month in usage fees. But the reason I did this, and I've never done this, if you want to hear an interesting backstory of how accidents happen, weird, like, why would I do something like this? And this is all stuff out of my own archive, 34 years of accumulated information. And in it also is the black site list, 150 some black sites, where they are, and also links to testimony from witnesses about what's there underground in deep underground military bases or SCIFs, secure compartment information facilities. So some of them people have heard of, like Nellis Air Force Base and Edwards. Some people most people never heard of.
Black sites. Mm-hmm. CIA controls black sites used by the U.S. government in its war on terror to detain people deemed to be enemy combatants.
Well, not that. That's we have various sites, but I'm talking about where retrieved UFOs have been put, where reverse engineered objects are located, where the man-made ones are. When we knock one down with an electromagnetic or weapon, a directional energy weapon, where are those taken? Where have they been studied? All that's in the archive. So it's a massive data dump.
Let me go through a couple things here. So one, this chairman of a former chairman of a Fortune 50 company,
great guy.
If any of these 6,000 patents were to be released, and right now, if I'm not mistaken, the punishment is they give you 75% of what they think the patent is worth. I believe that's what they say, and then if you sell it off to somebody else and they find out, you're going to jail for the rest of your life.
Right.
If you even talk about it, you're going to jail for the rest of your life. Right. And if you go on Invention Secrecy Act of 1951, the way they categorize on what goes in there, right there, if you can read it, folks, the Invention Secrecy Act allows the U.S. government to classify ideas and patents under secrecy orders, which definitely restrict public knowledge of them. And at the top, if you read it, the United States federal law designed to prevent disclosure of new investigations, the opinion and technologies that in the opinion of selected federal agencies, so it's purely opinion-based, of selected federal agencies present an alleged threat, it's alleged threat, to the economic stability and national security of the United States. Okay, so energy, oil, let's just go through it. ExxonMobil right now, market cap, June 2024 is $497 billion, $500 billion company. Chevron is 284. PetroChina, 244, but that's China. India, UK, set them aside. You got a few other companies. You got BP, $100 billion companies. These are not small companies we're talking about. Shell 218, right? I can go through a bunch of these that we know about. If these things were released, how long before these industries were wiped out? Or would it be nasty? Would it be ugly? Would it be a danger to society? Would people be doing, would protesting, riots, ugliness, power players coming in saying, you're touching my wealth, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. What would happen if this actually was to be released?
Well, see, this is the tragedy of corrupt interests keeping good science away from the public for over 100 years. Yes, it's going to be very difficult. It's like an addiction. The current energy paradigm, the whole planet is now addicted to substances that are not only cancer-causing and bad for the environment, but costly, and that leaves, as I mentioned, 3 billion people with no means even to cook their food. So that paradigm should have been retired, but we can't help that. We have to take the fact this is 2024. And so what I have always said is that it has to be released and then transition. But keep in mind, let's take one example, since you're getting into the macroeconomics of this. We make on the planet about 100 million motor vehicles a year, mm-hmm. but there are 1.5 billion motor vehicles on the road, mm-hmm. cars and trucks. So even if you retooled and twinkled your nose like Bewitched or something and retrofitted all vehicle manufacturing to these systems, it would take about 15 years. And to tool up, it'll be 5. So you're talking 20 years. Now, I'll probably be dead because I turned 69 next week. And, your children will be in college. And so even if we did it immediately, because there's a lag time, because we're not talking about, downloading an app. We're talking about heavy industry here. We're talking about public utilities. We're talking about manufacturing a box that would be at your house that would generate all the energy you need for your home, no bill, no power bill, and no pollution. But to retrofit 3 billion households on the planet, 2.5 billion, this is a massive, this makes the Marshall Plan after World War II look like nothing. So yes, this is what I've been saying to policymakers. This needs to happen. It will happen. But the longer, this is like a leak in your roof, right? The longer you put that off, the harder and the mess is going to be to clean up and the more damage. So this is the tragedy of it, is that this was allowed to go on. And one of the things I've observed, people in periods of enormous power and responsibility, when they realize, when I go into a facility and I say, see that thing? That's an alternative energy and propulsion device, what people call a UFO. Well, once they realize what these implications are, then they get scared. They get to the edge of the table or the edge of the cliff and back off. So here we are. Now, I've spent 34 years trying to resolve this problem, literally 50% of my biological life. And it's a very heavy lift and a very dangerous lift. But, what are we going to leave to our children? Your children, I have 12 grandchildren. What are we leaving, on this planet to them? And I think beyond that, there's even a bigger issue not being addressed. Some of these UFOs or UAPs are from extraterrestrial origin. None of them are hostile, but we have been targeting them with electromagnetic directional energy weapons since the 40s. And those technologies have become more and more sophisticated. And, they have not struck back. If they did, the whole planet would come to a standstill, because I think they're fundamentally peaceful and very highly developed socially and spiritually. However,
how do we know that?
Well, because there have been a lot of people who've had contact, and there's no evidence otherwise. Now, there's some scary stories, what we call the stagecraft of, so-called abductions and mutilations and things like that. But those are all done by covert human programs. Those are lookalikes. We can get into that. That's there's a whole section of the archive on that. And we actually document this. I have top secret guys who come forward on the record stating point blank that they have been part of operations abducting people. And in fact, the very famous astrophysicist, Dr. Jacques Vallée, who some of his work ended up in Steven Spielberg's movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And he's up in his 80s now. And in 1992, he wrote a book, and he had a log entry where he had received a 1985 CIA document that outlined, for psychological warfare purposes, them using these advanced technologies that look like an alien craft and other technologies to, quote, abduct peasants in Argentina and Brazil for their psychological warfare value. Now, that's in black and white. And so people go, this sounds crazier than the myth you've been told, and it is. But why would they do that? Werner von Braun, in his deathbed in 1974, told a member of my team, Carol Rosen, that their plan is to create, eventually, an hoax, a threat from outer space, to try to unite the world, like Independence Day, the movie, in a sort of a military global junta of humans against aliens. It's all nonsense. It's BS. But it sells well. It sells movies. It sells tickets. It sells books.
This is the Blue Beam, Project Blue Beam?
Yeah, that related to that. And I've met with many men who've been on operationally, like literally have been operational on those programs. Now, it went from really clunky stuff, like the Betty and Barney Hill abduction. People think that was alien. It wasn't. It was us. Late 50s, early 60s. And I think President Obama's actually working on a documentary about that. And it was an interracial couple, a very interesting story. But most people have no idea what really happened with that. And this is one of the really disturbing parts of this archive, is what are the technologies that are in the hands of these sort of monsters, and how have they used it to deceive the public, but also deceive policymakers and presidents. You know, I talked to a man named Colonel Holman, Holman. He passed away, and this was maybe 5 years ago. And he was on a committee trying to sell first Carter, who wouldn't bite, and then President Reagan on SDI, Star Wars, the Strategic Defense Initiative. And they weren't biting. And then he said, what we did, we eventually played the alien threat card. And that's when Reagan signed on to it. Now, he was prepared to do so because I'm working with an older CIA officer with a PhD. Some of his information is in the archive, but his name's redacted because we still work together. And he actually was a postdoc, had a PhD, and briefed candidate Ronald Reagan in 1979 when he was thinking of running for president on the UFO issue, because Reagan had had a couple sightings, including one on the governor's plane that you may have heard about. It's well documented. And so, you know, President Reagan, here's one of the problems of the president. You get into a position and say you're a governor, or you're a real estate developer like Mr. Trump, whatever you are, or, you know, Mr. Carter said he was a peanut farmer. He was actually a nuclear engineer and the top of his class in Annapolis, very smart, probably our highest IQ president. Politically not very good, but he was very, very smart. But and you're going to come in there, and the people who are going to come in and brief you on this, if you ask, you're either going to be told nothing, and I know this because I've dealt with it, pretty much every bit of presidential involvement since Clinton. You're either going to be told nothing, or you're going to be told a version of the truth that manipulates you into decisions they want to make. They want you to make. And that's what happened to Mr. Trump and Mr. Pence, and also to Ronald Reagan. So it's dangerous. That kind of secrecy, let me tell you why it's so dangerous. It's the foxes, and there's manning the hen house. You know, who's overseeing this, right? Who's looking into this, and who is in charge? Well, it certainly isn't the president. They come and go every 4 to 8 years. Members of Congress come and go all the time. So there's sort of this permanent committee, a few hundred people, and they've arrogated this, because it's so secret, the right to do this. But they cannot be trusted.
Who do they report to?
Themselves. I mean, this is a global operation. And by the way,
it's a global operation. So from different countries.
100%. No, it take the map of the world and erase all the geopolitical lines. It doesn't matter. And that's actually, When the Senate intelligence people wanted me to come in, there was a map of the world in the conference room in the skiff. And I said, see that map? Erased all the lines on it. These folks, the world is their oyster. They operate as they want.
Who nominates them?
Nobody. They move up through the chain of command or through corporations.
How do you move up?
You're moved up by giving a little information, see what you do with it. And if you can keep the secrecy. But more importantly, once you reach a certain level of clearance, and you realize how monstrous and criminal the operations are, will you stay with that? I'm dealing with a team right now that I can't see. I won't even say what state they're in. But let's just say in September, I was on a classified helicopter over 2 black sites and was shown where the underground openings are out in the desert, where the man-made ones come up and are tested. But there are also electromagnetic pulse weapons that are illegal by the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty that are, and I have video and photos of this. One of the photos in the archive, I'll just tell you that. And there looks like there's a landing strip. It's not. It's an area with diamonds on it, and that's where the man-made, some people call them ARVs, alien reproduction vehicles, come up from underground. And I have the photos and video of the underground opening. We went right around it because this guy was cleared. He's one of the top people in the system, but he's wanting to defect.
And it's one of these 100 people, one of these couple hundred people?
He's very high up. I wouldn't say he's on that policy level, but operationally, he's been read in for many, many, many years, and he's very high up.
What's his reason? And so you went there and you actually saw it?
Yeah, videotape. I have all of it.
And it's public?
Some of it. Off the air, I'll show you the video of it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so that in September, and then of course I was almost killed in October. I think I mentioned too.
How'd you get almost killed in October?
Oh, someone tampered with my mountain bike seat and it snapped off, and I was going fast, and my left foot came off, and 2 bones were in the air, and my left shoulder came off, and my abdomen got. I had 4 surgeries in 3 months.
You got to be kidding me.
Yeah, I'm up doing everything now, but it was hell on earth. But it's not the first.
And how do you know it was tampered with? How do you know somebody?
Well, I mean, it wasn't the bike that. It was like the whole thing just was kind of saw through and snapped off. We can't prove anything. Who cares? I mean, as an emergency doctor, I'm a trauma doctor anyway. Ironically, I'm laying there going, it's like an out-of-body experience, seeing me there with my foot off and the bones in the air. But I go, the only thing I said, I'm effed. It was like, that's the only thing I said. But, it was a full trauma.
How much are you, because you're in this world, who do you trust? Like how do you process who you can trust and who you can't trust?
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's like the thing. It was in the Bible. Ye shall know them by their deeds. So, my wife, my close circle of friends I've had for 50, 60 years, my assistant who's been with me for a quarter of a century, and other people. And, now there's this whole team of, special forces folks and people who are defecting that are very close and who are enormously courageous men who want to do the right thing for the world and for the country. Green Berets and Navy SEALs, some of them. But some of them are still very active. Some have separated from the military and are working in private. But they're all gathering to do this disclosure of the subject. And then what I just mentioned, the gentleman who had me on the chopper over these black sites in September, there's a whole team that he is involved with at these sensitive facilities that are the word used when he first reached out to me was fed up. They are fed up with what's happening to the planet. They're fed up with the illegal secrecy, and they're fed up with some of the atrocities that are happening that they've been part of. And, it's very emotional for these men.
This chairman of the former chairman of the Fortune 50 company, if he comes out, what would he be leaking as a whistleblower to the country, to the world?
Well, he'd be leaking that one of the largest corporations in the world, and certainly in America, had worked on these programs, and he has with him in his possession the schematics and plans for these technologies and devices. And he wants to hand them over before he passes away. but he doesn't want to see any collateral damage with his family. So that's why I mentioned, I've been trying to get this sort of protection. And even with that, I'm not sure who won't. People get very cold feet. I mean, I'll tell you a weird story that happened in the past year. There was a man who had worked out of the northern Nevada test range. His testimony and information and the drawings of this event are in the archive. We took his name out because he doesn't want to be known publicly yet. But he reached out to me about this, and he was on a retrieval team. So it was at if you go from Nellis Air Force Base way north where the nuclear test range was, where we did open air testing, there's a huge area, and there's an underground base there and facility, and there's a team, a helicopter pad team with Delta Force guys, and then this guy had been part of the retrieval operation in hazmat suits. He was first put in there to retrieve man-made, the triangular UFOs that are coming out of Northrop Grumman and Raytheon that would malfunction and crash. And we have great artist rendition of exactly what these look like. Then he was moved into an operation where they would target, someone was targeting, not him, the extraterrestrial ones, and stun them, and they would go in to retrieve them. And when he realized what we were doing, and he had an encounter with two of these EBINs, extraterrestrial biological entities, is what they're called, or aliens. I don't use the word aliens. People think of someone from, Peru. But what happened is he was so sickened by what they were doing, he tried to separate from the operation, which you generally can't do. But he had an uncle, and we know who he is, very high up in this clandestine program, who helped get him out. But then he subsequently went through a whole series of events, including an attempted alien abduction with these fake-looking gray aliens. And he actually knocked one down. We have a great artist rendering of how it split open what looked like the skin, and they were all fiber optics and integrated circuits and stuff. This is very sophisticated technology, way beyond what people can imagine we might have. So when he reached out to me, he was going to come actually to the